Controlling Your Depression. Self-Management Through Cognitive Therapy. Prepared by Gary Emery, Ph.D., Assistant Clinical Professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of California, Los Angeles Medical School, and Director of the Center for Cognitive Therapy in Beverly Hills, California. This program is narrated and published by BMA Audio Cassettes, a division of Guilford Publications Incorporated, New York, New York. This is the second of two cassettes. Side 1 contains the beginning of Step 6. Side 2 concludes Step 6 and contains Steps 7 and 8. The purpose of this next step toward depression control is to use the techniques you have learned so far to identify and solve target problems in your own life. Your goal should be to change step by step the way you think and act, and to develop effective new anti-depression habits. Depression can affect all aspects of your life, and it is difficult to overcome it by attacking the whole problem at once. We have found that it is much more useful to concentrate on one group of symptoms at a time, to see each subgroup as a separate target problem to work on. Your symptoms are maintained by your thinking and behavior, so it is this that you want to target for change. In cognitive therapy, we use the three tools to bring about change, which you already are acquainted with: the activity schedule, the thought record, and the thought counter. In this tape, I'll show you how to apply these tools to the specific signs of your depression. And keep in mind that symptoms of depression are interrelated. In fact, this is one of the reasons your depression continues. Each symptom reinforces and supports the others. For example, if you have trouble concentrating, this will make you think poorly about yourself, which in turn will make you feel sad. The negative thoughts about yourself and your sadness will interfere with your concentration. There's a positive side to this. Because the symptoms are interrelated, it's possible to work on one group and as a result find improvement in other areas. It is not necessary for you to work on each symptom of your depression. Instead, if you work on the ones you have a good chance of controlling, the others are likely to diminish. The behavior symptoms of depression are usually the best ones to tackle first. Behavioral symptoms of depression refer to how you act. When you become depressed, you become passive, inactive, withdrawn from others, avoid pleasure, and begin to procrastinate on everyday activities. These problems are more easily controlled, and therefore the best place to start for most people. Many therapists advise depressed people to become more active. You may have tried to do this yourself by starting jobs you've been putting off, trying to get out and see people. However, like many other depressed people, you probably have been unsuccessful. When you're not depressed and are simply procrastinating, it's good advice to become more active. However, when you're depressed, it's much more complicated than this. Most people don't understand why the depressed person remains inactive. When you're depressed, you have trouble getting active for several reasons. The major one is your thinking. You tend to believe that you won't be able to perform adequately, that you'll do a poor job, or that you won't enjoy it or get any satisfaction. These thoughts can be very powerful and stop you from trying, and even keep you from enjoying or getting satisfaction from the activity once you do it. Before showing how to handle the thoughts that block you from becoming more constructively active, I must explain some of the reasons why it's beneficial to do more when you're depressed. Activity usually helps you feel better. Your mood generally improves. It distracts you from negative thoughts that may make you feel worse. You improve your self-esteem by completing projects and doing more. By being more active, you undermine the belief that you don't control your own life. You have a chance to test out your ideas about what you can and can't handle. Finally, by being more active, you can stop others from nagging you about doing little. This alone is no small achievement. To combat your passivity, the first hurdle to overcome are thoughts which discourage action. The strategy we've found to be most useful here is to write out all the reasons why you can't do something. It's too difficult. I won't be able to handle it. I won't do it perfectly. and then test each one in a small experiment. Approach the activity as a way to evaluate such thoughts. When you first become more active, you shouldn't expect to find immediate improvement. Often, behavior change comes before a change in emotions. So don't expect that by being more active, you'll immediately get over your depression. While some people find quick improvement, it's more common that it takes time for greater activity to have other positive results. When you take steps to become more active, remember your motivation typically works backwards. You feel like you can and want to be active only after you've started doing it. If you wait for your motivation before you start, you could end up just waiting. The desire usually develops as you push ahead. We have found that the more depressed people do new things, the more their desire to do still more increases. If you use them, the 3 tools I explained on the first tape can be of real benefit to you here. The main one for combating your desire to do less is the activity schedule. You can start by recording your current level of activity and seeing where you can realistically increase it. You'll find that recording your current activities will have the effect of encouraging you to do still more. Indeed, keeping those records are an activity in itself. The next step is to schedule more activities for yourself, putting more structure into your life. When you schedule activities, keep the following points in mind. Plan 1 or 2 days at a time rather than a whole week. It is often helpful to schedule at night for the next day. Plan on an hour-by-hour basis, and be flexible. If something unexpected occurs, say you have extra work, or an unannounced visitor comes, be prepared to change your schedule. Have some alternative plans that you can use in such a case. If you miss something on your activity schedule, it's not necessary to go back and make it up. Rather, go ahead and continue with the next item. Don't ruminate over something you didn't do, but focus instead upon the future. If you finish an activity earlier than you planned, say you complete a paper in 30 minutes instead of 45, don't begin activities you've scheduled for later on. Rather, do some pleasure or mastery activity in the spare time. It helps to have a list of these that you can draw from, things that don't take a great deal of time, such as writing letters or reading magazines or newspapers. You can use self-instruction about how you want to act to get moving. You may find talking to your muscles, legs, get up out of the chair, to be quite helpful. You can write instructions to yourself. You might write a script of how you plan to act, and then follow it. A general rule when you're depressed is not to lie down and sulk, because this only increases feelings of depression and makes you feel more tired in the long run. Instead, force yourself to stay out of bed and do something else. You may have some trouble deciding what to schedule. In general, try to build activities around your normal routine. Here you can list typical ways you behaved before you got depressed, and then try to perform these activities as if you weren't depressed. When you plan activities, don't be too specific. Go down to the car, open the car door. Or too general, go out for the day. The goal is somewhere in between these two. If you're having trouble finding pleasure activities to schedule, ask yourself questions such as, what do I enjoy learning? What kinds of trips do I like to take? What do I like to do when I'm alone? What do I prefer when I'm with others? What activities do I enjoy for small amounts of money or for more money? From these questions you can generate a list of pleasurable activities. Do those that have any glimmer of appeal to you. To generate mastery activities, ask yourself similar questions. Once you have identified your own mastery activities, you can put them in a hierarchy from easiest to most difficult. Start by doing the easiest ones first, and then gradually increase the degree of difficulty as you go along. Remember, when you rate the degree of mastery, this is quite subjective. It's based on how you feel right now. When you're depressed, doing simple things such as getting gas in the car may take a great deal of effort and thus deserve a high mastery rating. When you're not depressed, this may not be a mastery experience at all. Take your current level of capacity as your guide. You can use your thought record to help you become more active as well. After you plan activities, go through them in your mind and think of the reasons you have for not wanting to do each one. I won't enjoy it. It'll be painful. It'll take too much time. Write these thoughts down on your thought record and then answer them in a positive way. I don't know unless I try. It's worked in the past. I will just push myself. You can use the thought record in this way to help you overcome the blocks that are almost guaranteed to come when you try to be more active. You can use the thought counter also to help you become more active. You can count the thoughts you have that would keep you from completing a task. I can't stand it, it's too much, and so on. Counting these thoughts will allow you to gain more control over them. For example, when one client started to fix his car, he had thoughts and urges to stop. He found that counting his discouraging thoughts gave him greater control and allowed him to finish. Another way you can use the thought counter is when you're engaging in an activity and you have thoughts that take you away from fully experiencing it. For example, say you've scheduled going to a movie as a pleasure activity, and you spend most of your time at the movie having killjoy thoughts. This movie's no good. I don't know why I came. Nothing makes me feel good. In a situation like this, simply counting thoughts will help you focus on the film, enjoy being out more fully, whether or not the program is first-rate. The second group of important symptoms includes negative emotions or feelings you have when you're depressed. These can be diffuse and global, so you generally feel bad, or they can be more specific, such as anxiety or guilt. You want to control such feelings fairly soon because they can affect all of your experiences. They can discourage you from becoming more active and can intensify the other symptoms of depression. Negative feelings are caused, for the most part, by distorted thoughts about your experiences and have the effect of generating still more negative thoughts. For example, if you're sad because you feel that you're a loser, this sadness causes you to start having more thoughts about being a loser. There are different negative emotions associated with depression. The most common is sadness. This can be experienced as a heavy feeling throughout the body. Other feelings associated with depression are loneliness, guilt, shame, anxiety, and sometimes anger. The type of emotion you experience can be traced to the direction of your automatic thoughts. If you think you've lost something important, your sense of self-worth, another person, a job, you'll feel sad. If you're afraid you will lose something of value, or fear that something bad will happen to you in the future, you'll become more anxious. If you feel you've broken some personal code, you'll tend to feel guilty. If you feel other people have known about how badly you act, you will feel greater shame. And if you blame other people for the problem, you will feel still angrier. In all these emotional states, the same tools can be used to control the emotions. You can use the activity schedule in several ways to help you overcome emotional symptoms. One of the most useful is to keep track of when you experience particular negative feelings. This information is crucial to help you discover mistakes you may be making in your interpretation of the emotion. For example, people often think their sadness or anxiety will last forever, that it's free-floating and not specifically related to events or thoughts. As a result, they conclude they have no control over it at all. By keeping careful records of the emotion, they often find that they are mistaken. I have worked with many people who start by thinking they're anxious all the time, but by keeping records, they usually find their anxiety is time-limited and related to specific situations and ways of thinking. By recording the severity of the target emotion from 0 to 100 on the activity schedule, you can pinpoint when it reaches an uncomfortable level. At this stage, start analyzing your thoughts. You can also use the activity schedule to become involved in things that can counteract the negative emotions. For example, if you're sad, you can decide to do something pleasurable that is incompatible with sadness. If you're lonely, you might schedule more activities with other people. You can also schedule activities to distract you from your negative emotions. For example, if you're anxious, you might plan for physical activities such as running or cleaning the house to get your mind off it. While this is not the most elegant way to work on the emotion, it is a way to get things more under your control. The second tool you can use to control the emotional symptoms of depression is the thought record. Here you can use the 3 A's I explained earlier: awareness, answering, and action, to gain control. First, become aware of the unreasonable thoughts that lead to particular emotions. Then answer these with more realistic views. And finally, act on your new thoughts. Because the thoughts that cause emotions are believable, you have to take an active approach to correct the errors. First, you want to identify the error. For example, when you become sad, look for overgeneralizations. You may be assuming because you lost one thing that this carries over to your total loss. You may well be overgeneralizing and believing you're totally inadequate. To illustrate, one of my patients was sad because she believed people at work didn't like her. After using the thought record, she was surprised to discover that not everyone dislikes me, it's just a few people. I'm taking this out of context. She further realized that there will always be a certain number of people who will dislike you, and that this should be expected. Finally, she concluded that most people are so concerned with their own interests that they really have little time to spend worrying about you. As you start to apply the thought record in this way, it's helpful to take your negative ideas to their ultimate conclusion. Do this by assuming your current perceptions are correct and see what the result would be. In the case I just described, the woman was able to come up with the thought, even if everyone didn't like me, I don't need to be depressed. I would want to find out why I'm not liked, so I could change if I wanted to, but I don't have to be depressed about it. Her homework then was to check out her perceptions as to whether or not people liked her at work, and to continue to record and correct unrealistic thoughts when they came up. When you're anxious, the error is about the future. The error often involves exaggerating the worst possible outcome. This has been called catastrophizing. Other errors include ignoring evidence that the bad event won't happen, and ignoring rescue factors. Anxiety can be so powerful that you become afraid of the fear. Keep in mind that while anxiety is certainly uncomfortable, it is not dangerous. With guilt, the error you make usually revolves around taking on excessive responsibility for bad events. You don't take into account the circumstances around the activity. You assume total responsibility for the event and don't see the role others have played in it. When you're excessively guilty, you are probably taking unnecessary responsibility for many factors over which you have no control.
This ends Side 1.
At the end of this tape, I will show you how to recognize and change unrealistic beliefs that lead to depression. These underlying beliefs generate the automatic thoughts that produce negative emotions. For example, suppose you believe that you have to be perfect. If you conclude you haven't met these standards, which by the way are impossibly high, you'll feel sad. If you fear that you won't be able to meet them in the future, you'll be anxious. If you believe others have found out that you haven't met these standards, you'll feel shame or guilt. Whenever you can, trace your automatic thoughts back to the beliefs they rest upon, and work on changing these. The third tool you can use to control your emotions is the thought counter. When you're working with your thoughts, you don't always have a chance to write them out in record form. However, if you can count the number of times they occur, you gain some control over them, so you're not so much at their mercy. You can count thoughts around whatever emotion you are starting to feel. For example, you sense loneliness, and this is making you feel worse. Count the thoughts that contribute to loneliness, such as, no one cares about me. I'll always be alone. Keeping account of these thoughts has the effect of eventually decreasing them. Remember, most such negative thoughts are automatic. They don't come because you want them. Rather, they're involuntary. They're autonomous. This means that you do not have to respond to them. Instead, just count them and let them go. The third symptom cluster is the cognitive or thinking symptoms of depression. I've been talking at length about how depression causes you problems in how you think, specifically about the errors in thinking you make when you're depressed. This is just one group of thinking symptoms. The ones I want to emphasize here include difficulties in concentration and memory, trouble making decisions, and thoughts of suicide. Such thinking causes problems for your whole system, and is one reason why almost no aspect of your life is free from being affected by depression. You can use the activity schedule to improve the structure of your thinking, and in this way overcome cognitive symptoms. For example, one of the problems in lack of concentration is spending too little time on the material. If you have trouble concentrating on your studies or your job, you can schedule specific times to work at particular tasks. It is usually best to start with short periods and generally increase the amount of time you set aside for these activities. An activity schedule can help you make decisions in advance, so you won't be bothered by them later. Often the problem with decision-making is trying to overanalyze the situation. With minor matters, any decision is usually better than none at all. Most decisions have a range of outcomes that pretty much offset each other. The advantages and disadvantages of any one tend to cancel out. What, on excessive analysis, seems to be a wrong decision is often only a longer way around to the same goal. How can you use the thought record to overcome indecisiveness? First, try to find out what about the decision is causing you problems. Do you feel guilt? Say, over whether or not to take a vacation or spend your money? Do you predict you'll have a bad time? With the thought record, you can look for distortions and irrational aspects of the decision and then work to correct them. In the extreme, the thought record is particularly useful when you think of killing yourself. Most thoughts of suicide start off as a search for some emotional relief. Well, I'll just kill myself. However, this can be dangerous as a strategy. You may start to believe it's a practical solution. We found people who use suicide as a form of problem solving. They figure that this is a way out of their difficulties. The thought record lets you list and consider more calmly what your particular problems are and look for alternative solutions. The most prevalent thoughts of suicide people center around hopelessness. Such people are usually so pessimistic and feel so hopeless that they can't see that there are other realistic solutions available. They block, as it were, with the incorrect belief that there are no other answers to their problems. The first step is to confront openly such hopelessness. Often the best way to do this is to suspend the idea that there are no solutions and wait. Alternatives may take time to appear. If you don't have control over your suicide thoughts, or if you've begun to make tentative suicide plans, or if your deterrence against killing yourself have weakened, these are clear signals that you need to talk to a professional who can offer objective advice about your situation. You can use the thought counter in a number of ways with the cognitive symptoms. For example, when you're trying to concentrate, you can count the thoughts that have taken you away from focusing on the material. Say you're trying to work on balancing your checkbook, but keep thinking about your other problems. Just count the interfering thoughts. After you make a decision, you may start second-guessing whether it is the right one or not. You can simply count these second-guessing thoughts. The same applies to thoughts of suicide. You can gain some control over them just by counting. One of the cognitive symptoms of depression is ruminating, having repetitive thoughts about your loss or about a problem you can't solve. Often the problem comes from asking yourself questions that have no answers. Why can't my boyfriend come back? Why did I say that? Why did I make that mistake? The reason you can't find a solution is that none really exists. Therefore, these are pseudo-problems. Real problems have realistic solutions. One strategy that's helpful with ruminations is to use your thought counting. Just count the ruminations. Don't do anything more than that. You'll find that counting alone decreases such thinking. Basically, you can use the same strategy with the cognitive symptoms as you do with other symptoms. First, translate them into problems. Then, after evaluating your thinking and behavior, begin to solve them. If you have difficulty concentrating, you want to know first, what is the problem? Where am I having trouble concentrating? If you're having trouble reading the paper, you would want to make this a manageable problem. So you might try reading just one paragraph. Ask yourself, can I read one paragraph or not? Then test this out by trying to read just one. When you succeed, move ahead to try 2 paragraphs, and then 3. Don't, however, bite off more than you can handle at any one point. Next, let us turn attention to the physical symptoms of depression. Typically, these include lack of energy, problems of sleeping, loss of appetite, loss of sexual desire, and other problems such as backaches, headaches, which are made worse by depression. Again, you use the same basic strategy I've been talking about. Say you feel listless and lack energy. The fatigue often found in depression is a paradoxical type. The more you do, the less fatigue you have. And the less you do, the more fatigued you are. Strange as it may seem, when you're depressed, increased activity actually increases your energy level rather than the other way around. Therefore, you may want to start scheduling more activities for yourself. Lack of interest in sex and appetite often are caused by killjoy thoughts. I won't enjoy this, so why bother? Here you can use the thought record to refute such a discouraging frame of mind. You can also count killjoy thoughts. With sleep disturbances, keep in mind you may be getting more sleep than you think you are. You can keep track of this on the activity schedule to see what really happens. Depressed people often sleep more during the day, and as a result, less at night. If this is your case, you can schedule more activity during the day to counteract the pattern. You may have some ideas about sleep that make the problem worse. For example, if I don't get enough sleep, I won't be able to function tomorrow. This type of thinking often leads to insomnia. If you can't sleep because you have some problem on your mind, get up, go to another room, and do a thought record. Think of the 3 A's. Become aware of the specific thoughts that are keeping you awake, answer them, and make plans about how you're going to act on them the next day and night. The physical discomfort often associated with depression, such as pain, may well improve as you overcome your other symptoms. You can, however, take some steps to lessen such problems. For example, if you continually think about your physical symptoms, this tends to make them worse. So you can answer these thoughts on the thought record and count the thoughts about the physical problem, or schedule distracting activities. One common symptom of depression is weight change. Overweight people often gain weight when they become depressed. Those without a weight problem are inclined to lose pounds. If you want, you can begin a program to lose weight. You can use many of the same methods I've talked about to do this. You can monitor the activity schedule, when and what you eat. This will give you a way to pinpoint undesirable eating patterns. You can use the thought record to analyze and answer thoughts that lead to overeating, such as, I need this, I can't let any food go to waste. I've blown my diet, so I might as well eat anything. You can also count the thoughts that lead to overeating. However, if you're moderately to severely depressed, it's better to focus on some of the symptoms of depression before tackling a weight reduction program, which takes a lot of effort. To summarize, what you want to do is change the symptoms of depression into problems, and then apply the 3 tools to them. Keep in mind that when you do this, learning to use the tools becomes a skill. It takes time to learn how to use them effectively. With practice, you can become quite good at using these techniques, but it takes a while to learn how to do it right. Unfortunately, many people who run into problems find that their old symptoms return and then jump to the wrong conclusion. Nothing works. It's hopeless. This is one of the biggest blocks to maintaining improvement. There is little chance that you'll go through life without any problems. Many depressed people fail to recognize this realistic fact. You can't practice these skills unless you have problems. So when the inevitable problems appear, you can see this as a chance to use your skills and improve upon them. When you meet situations that elicit your depression symptoms, think of the tools that you are now familiar with. Even after you're over your depression, you will still run into problems that will give you a chance to use these same skills. Try to be on the lookout for these. As you go about working on your symptoms, You will find some strategy that works especially well for you, some idea, some thought, some action. The reason for this is that you're unique. Once you find what works for you particularly well, write it down or make a mental note of it. This way, the next time a similar problem comes up, you can draw on this resource.
Before moving on to the next step, practice these applications of your cognitive tools for at least a week, and then continue to use them regularly until they become a normal part of your life. The seventh step in depression control is to recognize the negative beliefs that underlie the problem. Since beliefs are more complex and durable than the kinds of negative thoughts you have now learned to handle, this task may require considerable self-study. Don't be concerned if it takes you some time to discover which of your own beliefs need most attention. I will give you some general suggestions to guide your search.
People who are prone to becoming depressed have learned a set of beliefs or rules that when activated can lead to depression. These beliefs are learned early in life and relate to some areas of vulnerability: rejection, love achievement, health, social success, morality. When you encounter situations that are relevant to a particular area, your beliefs are automatically activated. We all need beliefs and rules to survive. We use them to make sense of our experience, to set and reach goals, to help us evaluate and change our behavior. Personal rules give meaning to life and provide consistency. Unfortunately, some beliefs are self-defeating. They provide harsh standards for judging ourselves. They differ from other beliefs in that they are absolute, excessive, and what we call maladaptive. These often can lead to depression. Some examples of such beliefs are, if I'm not on top, I'm nothing. Or, life has to be fair. Or, no matter what I do, I'll fail. Or, you're no one unless someone loves you. If you've been depressed for any length of time, you have probably been operating on some self-defeating beliefs that you haven't ever questioned. It's important that you start to examine these beliefs, because unless you learn to change them, you will remain vulnerable to future depressions. You can use the idea of the 3 A's to change your beliefs. You become aware of them, answer or replace them with more flexible ones, and then act on the new ones. You should try to identify these beliefs as soon as you can. Your automatic thoughts and answers are clues to your basic beliefs. You'll see a pattern forming in your thinking as you keep your records. You can look over the automatic thoughts you've collected and see how many of them are of a certain type. Note any particular situation that you frequently feel bad in. Your automatic thoughts rest logically on beliefs. Although the belief may be silent, it can be inferred from the thoughts that lead to feeling bad. Even your symptoms are often related to some belief. For example, if your symptom is avoiding activity, your underlying belief may be, I cannot tolerate anything unpleasant. This is the type of belief you want to identify and change.
As you come to recognize which beliefs need to be altered, you are ready to work on changing them. This can be accomplished in much the same way you attacked your negative automatic thoughts.
You look for more realistic answers and then act on these. Keep in mind that these beliefs are arbitrary. They are not absolute truths, but beliefs that were learned and can be unlearned. The beliefs that lead to depression are self-fulfilling. If you believe you can't be happy without success, you'll probably be unhappy unless you get it. By predicting the consequences, you bring them about. You can challenge these beliefs by realizing they're self-fulfilling. Just because they bring about the result, you're unhappy because you don't have success, doesn't mean the beliefs have to be true. I am convinced that acting against your beliefs is the best way to change them. If you're afraid to make mistakes, go to places where you're likely to make mistakes. If you believe you have to be with others, force yourself to be alone. If you place high value on being accepted, Go to places where there's little chance of being accepted. If you're afraid of making a fool of yourself, do something outlandish. Acting against your beliefs is difficult, but it is one of the most powerful ways to change them. You have two methods you can use to avoid future depressions. The first way is to use the coping skills I've been talking about. You can develop your skills in using the three tools: the activity schedule, the thought record, and the thought counter. When the symptoms of the depression reappear, use one or more of these skills. The second way to avoid future depression is to work at identifying and changing the beliefs that predispose you to depression.
This ends the program.